I'm Liz Faublis, and this is Currents. Excitement in the air as the Pope's highly anticipated trip to Latin America gets underway.
We're very, very happy, even though we had such a short notice to get everything ready, but fortunately everything is ready.
We'll take a look at the significance behind Mexico's papal events. Plus, Americans opposed to the contraception mandate take their argument right to the government's doorstep. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, a highly anticipated trip, the first for Pope Benedict in the year 2012. Mexico, the destination today, part of a Latin American trip that will also see him touch down in Cuba. Now, we will have more on all that a little later in the show. But first, Americans across the country opposed to the Health and Human Services contraception mandate took that opposition right to the government's doorstep. 140 rallies were held at locations across the country to stand up for religious freedom. The mandate from the Obama administration requires that most religious organizations cover contraception, sterilization, and some abortion-inducing drugs in their health plans. Organizations that refuse to comply will be forced to pay stiff fines. The country's Catholic bishops have been outspoken in their opposition. They are asking Catholics to pray and fast for religious and conscious protection. As part of that, they are making available prayer cards available for download featuring images of Mary as the Immaculate Conception, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and St. Thomas More. The bishops are making physical copies of the two cards with Mary available to order. Now, back to today's rallies. They were sponsored by the Pro-Life Action League and Citizens for Pro-Life Society. This morning, I had a chance to speak with the vice president of the Pro-Life Action League, Ann Scheidler. And you are rallying in over 140 locations. Did you expect such an overwhelming response?
You know, when we started this project, we were hoping for maybe 50. This has been fabulous. People are just really so anxious to get out there and stand up for religious freedom and show our administration how we feel about the HHS mandate.
And I understand there's a rally being held in Boston Common, which is the oldest park in the United States. This is of particular importance to you guys. Why is that?
Well, the HHS mandate is an attack on the guaranteed religious freedom in our Constitution, where the government is trying to tell religious institutions what actually constitutes practicing their religion.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be unconstitutional, and we have to stand up and resist that.
Now, the Catholic bishops led the call for resistance to this HHS mandate, and they're going to be supporting your response as well. How do you feel about that?
We are really excited about that. You know, this is the first time in any of our experience that all of the bishops of the United States have united in an effort. And this is such an important issue, not just impacting the Catholic Church, but impacting anyone of any faith who wants the freedom to practice their faith the way their conscience and their faith dictates tell them. So when the bishops put out the call to the rest of us to stand up and demand our rights, we're excited to join them. This is really exciting things.
And Ann, I know you're out on the field and you're preparing for the rally, so I'm not really sure if you've heard about this yet, but Louisiana College threatening to shut down the school if Obama health care is not reviewed and this particular mandate is not rescinded. And we have at least 7 other colleges and universities challenging that mandate as well in lawsuits. Will events such as this one today play a role in helping other such institutions take these kinds of stands against the contraception rule?
I really think that they will, yes, because some people have been a little bit confused by the accommodation that came out just a few weeks ago, saying that insurance companies rather than the religious institutions would pay for contraception and sterilization. But the reality is, of course, the cost gets passed through anyway to the employer by the insurance company. So it was no accommodation at all. It's still a trampling of your religious freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can highlight that and make it clearer for people and give other universities and maybe hospitals and various kinds of religious institutions that serve the people, give them the motivation maybe they need or a little bit extra impetus to get out there and say, yeah, you know, we're not going to do this. We're going to fight it. We'll take it to court. There's plenty of nonprofit law firms out here that are willing to take this on, that are anxious to take this on, really, and hit the courts with it.
And you mentioned that accommodation to the mandate. This past week, the administration initiated what it called a 90-day comment period to get the public's input. However, nothing the government has done so far has addressed the greater issue, in your opinion. Bottom line, without mincing any words, what must the government do to make this right?
The government must completely back off. They cannot demand that a religious institution offer services that violate your conscience, that are immoral.
And the odds of that happening realistically, in your opinion?
I think are probably 0 to 5%.
Fair enough. And you know what, I've been reading some of the responses on your blog, and one man writes that, well, we would not be holding these types of rallies if we played our role in making better Christians. What do we see in our churches but old parishioners indicating that the church has a lot to do to get its message across to the younger generation of voters, rather than blaming Obama? What is your opinion on that particular comment? Have we also lost sight of some of the bigger issues as we address this mandate?
You know, the church has always had a hard job to teach morality. It goes against the popular, behavior. And yeah, we have to do a much better job of educating people as to what is moral, what is not moral, what constitutes good relationships and marriage and family, sexuality. These things are very hard to teach. What's the format? You know, some things are not quite appropriate for a Sunday homily, but we have our Catholic schools, which could certainly do a much better job of teaching the faith than they do. The Catholic electorate could do a much better job of electing people who reflect our values. We have a big job ahead, but one of them is we stand up and we rally and protect our nation from these kinds of attacks.
All right. Well, Ann, you know, we certainly wish you all the best today. Be safe and God bless.
Thank you much, Liz.
Thank you. Ann Scheidler, Vice President, Pro-Life Action League. Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. U.S. bishops will side with the federal government in a case involving one state's immigration law. That story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. Coming up later, Mexico rejoices as Pope Benedict arrives there. First, a look at the rest of the day's headlines. Well, it could be one of the strongest statements so far against the Obama administration's health care plan.
We will close the institution before we will support abortifacients and abortion-causing procedures as mandated by President Obama.
And that is the president of Louisiana College, which is affiliated with the Louisiana Baptist Convention. He was speaking at a town hall event hosted by Newt Gingrich. The school has filed suit against the federal government, saying the health care law violates the college's constitutional rights. Students there have mixed reactions to their college president's statement.
He's not thinking about his students, he's thinking about his personal beliefs. And as the dean of students, that is his responsibility to take care of his students.
Our school is built on those beliefs, and so I think that would not be out of the realm of possibility for that to happen. I am against abortion.
Meanwhile, bishops in at least 2 states are calling for a day of prayer and fasting for religious liberty. The bishops of Pennsylvania and Iowa are asking Catholics to dedicate next Friday, March 30th, to that cause. The request coincides with the Lenten season. Now, in their letter, the Pennsylvania bishops say some have falsely suggested that the mandate is about contraception when it is primarily about religious liberty and First Amendment rights. In a separate letter, Iowa's bishop echoes that statement. New data from the Pew Research Center shows an increasing number of Catholics believe the Obama administration is unfriendly to religion. According to Catholic News Agency, the latest Pew data shows 25% of Americans feel that way. That's up 10% from August of 2009, which was less than a year after President Obama took office. Now, the latest data shows 42% of Catholics believe the government is friendly to religion, while 25% think it's pretty neutral. Elsewhere, even as U.S. bishops oppose the federal government in the contraception mandate, they're siding with Washington in an immigration battle. The bishops have announced they will file an amicus brief in a case involving Arizona's immigration law. The measure allows police in the state to question a suspect about his immigration status if they believe a person may be in the country illegally. In a letter, Cardinal Timothy Dolan and Archbishop Jose Gomez also say congressional leaders should build consensus toward immigration reform. Well, North Carolina's bishops are calling on voters to support a ballot initiative on marriage. On May 8th, voters in the state will decide on a measure that would affirm marriage as between a man and a woman. The bishops there have been getting the word out through a series of online videos.
It is regulated by civil laws and church laws. Marriage did not originate either from the church or from the state, but from God. Therefore, neither church nor state can alter the basic meaning and structure of marriage. As North Carolinians discern their vote in the upcoming referendum on the support for traditional marriage, I want to clarify our principled reasons for this support, reasons rooted in natural law and faithful to divine revelation.
Earlier this week, Charlotte Bishops Peter Jugis and Raleigh Bishop Michael Burbridge responded to a statement from President Obama's re-election campaign. The bishops said that they strongly disagreed with the Obama campaign's assessment of the marriage amendment as singling out and discriminating against same-sex couples. The bishop said the church is against hatred and unjust treatment of anyone, but that does not negate the understanding of marriage as between a man and a woman. Meanwhile, new data shows more Americans are getting married later in life. According to the National Center for Health Statistics, the average age for women who marry for the first time is 26. For men, the age rises to 28. The research also showed that the number of women living with a man rather than getting married has quadrupled over the last 30 years. A big ruling on marriage in Europe, the European Court of Human Rights says that its member states are not required to grant marriages to same-sex couples. The ruling came amid a case involving two women in France who were denied the opportunity to adopt a child together. According to the Scottish Catholic Observer, the decision also stated that in countries where same-sex marriage is legal, churches that refuse to marry same-sex couples would be guilty of discrimination. Well, just days before a sex abuse trial was set to get underway in Philadelphia, a former priest has entered a guilty plea. According to reports, Edward Avery pled guilty to abuse and endangering the welfare of a child. Avery was given a sentence of 2.5 to 5 years in state prison. Now, by entering that plea, the former priest avoids facing a trial. The case against Philadelphia Archdiocese's former Secretary of Clergy and another priest will still go forward, with the trial set to begin on Monday. And students at one local college hoping to have some holy days off will be disappointed. Stony Brook University on Long Island has announced it will begin holding classes on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Good Friday, according to the Jewish Week. A school official said that the decision was made to ensure some religions were not given preferential treatment over others. The paper reports that Stony Brook's 5 chaplains met with school officials to voice their disapproval. Well, stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, from Mexico, Leon's mayor opens up about Pope Benedict's visit.
Benedict XVI is coming to finish the work of John Paul II. And in that sense, we feel that he's completing a circle with Mexico and particularly with our community.
Welcome back. Today we've been covering Pope Benedict's long-awaited arrival in Mexico, the first stop on his Latin American trip. Now, recapping part of the trip so far, before boarding his plane in Rome, the Pope was seen using a cane. Now, Vatican officials say the 84-year-old pontiff decided to use the cane just to feel more secure, not because of any medical reasons. What's interesting is this is reportedly the first time Benedict has been seen using a cane in public. Now, on board the plane, the Holy Father spoke with reporters, as he always does. According to Catholic News Service, the Pope answered pre-selected questions. When asked about human rights in Cuba, Benedict said that the Church is always on the side of freedom, freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. The Pope said that the Church wants to help with dialogue in Cuba to help move the country toward a just society. He was also asked about the drug trafficking in Mexico that has cost an estimated 50,000 people their lives over the last 5 years. The Pope responded, "The Church has a responsibility to unmask evil and the idolatry of money that enslaves people." Now, despite troubling situations in both countries, most people are looking forward to the Pope's visit, including the mayor of León, Mexico, Ricardo Sheffield Padilla. Earlier today, he sat down with Father Jorge Ortiz of the Diocese of Brooklyn, who's in Mexico covering the Pope's trip for Currents. Sheffield Padilla told us how he felt when he first heard that Pope Benedict was coming to his city.
It almost knocked my socks out because it was a real surprise having this fabulous news, because León is a city that was looking forward to receiving John Paul II, and he was here in Mexico 5 times, and in every visit, León came up as a proposal of a city that should be visited because of its size. It's the 5th largest city in population, and because the large percentage of the population that is Catholic. So we always thought that he would come to León. Unfortunately, he never did, even though we were almost there. And it seems like Benedict XVI is coming to finish the work of John Paul II. And in that sense, we feel that he's completing a circle with Mexico, and particularly with our community here in the center of Mexico in León. So we're very happy, even though we had such a short notice to get everything ready. But fortunately, everything is ready. The history of Mexico and Catholicism are tied together. We were talking about the independence. The independence started here with an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe as the flag of the independent movement. And it stayed that way during the first months of the revolutionary movement of independence. And at this moment in which we've been struggling against crime, especially organized crime, and the drug lords, the visit of the Pope brings hope and brings strength that is very necessary to keep fighting against crime.
How you live your Catholicism?
Well, I go to Mass on Sundays, make contact with God through prayer at least twice a day. Especially, I put myself in the hands of the Lord when I need to talk to people, and I know that what I'm going to say can make a difference. Politicians, we talk all day, but not in every moment we have the opportunity of making a difference with what we say. But when I know that moment comes, and sometimes it can come 3 or 4 times during a day, sometimes 1 time only during the week, but in those moments I do put myself in the hands of the Lord, asking him that may he show me and help me say the right things. Lack of paternal figure is something that's very difficult in Mexico. There's a lot of women who live alone because their husbands, or who used to be their husband, at least physically, left to work to the United States or just disappeared. So there are a lot of single mothers, even though they were originally married, and that is a social problem in Mexico. And I think that the best way of being close to the people who have a pain, who have a problem, is listening. Sometimes that's the only thing you can do, is listen. But in relation to those who know less or have less, and which there are many in our country, unfortunately, there are several programs that we work with the federal government to bring them close to them, and at least the extreme poverty, help it out so that it doesn't exist. We have poverty, but not extreme. Maybe you don't know, but we have something in common with New York. The police department of New York trained our team of policemen here in León, and you have a special task force in New York that's the only one worldwide besides León, because last October we graduated our first generation. Thank you to the police department of New York for sharing their technology and knowledge with us. And now there's 2 cities in the world with this team, which is New York and León. I hope you come and visit us someday. to, as we say, our pretty León from a Mexican song, Su bonito León, Guanajuato. Aquí los esperamos, es su casa.
León Mayor Ricardo Sheffield Padilla. Stay tuned. More on the Pope's trip straight ahead. When we return, a look at the history and symbolism behind Mexico's papal events. Preparations for Pope Benedict's visit to Mexico have been underway for quite some time, ever since plans for his trip were confirmed. While there are monetary costs to the country, the visit is also expected to have many benefits. CNN's Rafael Romo has more on that.
Near a colonial city admired for its rich historic architecture, it's a project of celestial proportions. Construction workers have labored for months. Their mission? To build an altar worthy of a pope and an outdoor venue that can accommodate 700,000 people.
We have already received people from states throughout Mexico and also from other countries, as well as North and South America. We've had requests from people with an open spirit and anxious to meet Pope Benedict.
Even the drug cartels have promised to cooperate, officials say, hanging banners pledging to keep the peace for the pontiff's stay. The Pope's visit will be a blessing for Mexico in more ways than one. The Mexican National Confederation of Tourism estimates that 540,000 people will travel to Guanajuato and spend roughly $80 million in meals, transportation, shopping, and lodging. Jesus Guerrero Santos, a renowned Mexican artist, has been working for months to create the symbolic artwork that will be used in the Mass to celebrate the occasion.
Esta sección de cerámica.
Creating an altar, he says, out of nickel, silver, and ceramics. Tourism officials hope the papal visit will put Guanajuato on the map. Billboards herald the special celebration along highways throughout central Mexico.
CNN's Rafael Romo reporting. One of the big events scheduled for Sunday, Benedict will celebrate an open-air Mass. Rome Reports has more on that event.
On Sunday, March 25th, during the Pope's visit to Mexico, he'll celebrate Mass at the Bicentennial Park, which is located on the foot of a famous mountain known as Cubilete Hill, where a historic monument was built back in the year 1920. In the early 20th century, Catholics were persecuted in Mexico during a war. So precisely to ask God for peace, in the year 1920, the church built a statue of the Sacred Heart. But 8 years later, the monument was destroyed by the government, just as priests were forced out of the country.
The monument was destroyed and people were complaining about it. So in an act of defiance, Mexico's president at that time, Plutarco Elias Calles, closes down churches and temples and then forces out priests and bishops.
Almost 20 years later, in 1942, the Bishop of León built the current image of Christ the King, which is over 8,000 feet high. It still stands tall in the Cubilete Hill as a sign of victory and freedom.
The monument shows Christ with his arms wide open. It's made of bronze and weighs about 80 tons. Something that always catches my attention is that at his feet there are two angels, one bearing the crown of thorns and one that holds a royal crown.
The first angel symbolizes the suffering of martyrs, the second, the eventual victory of the people. And there's also a basilica, which is the main destination for pilgrims. Now this time around, it will be the Pope who makes the visit.
Knowing that the Pope will be there, praying alongside thousands of Mexicans and calling for God's blessing, I think all their work will pay off, and they will be very happy.
Roughly 400,000 people will attend that Mass, but Raimundo won't be one of them since he's studying to become a priest in Rome. Even so, he says he'll be there in spirit, especially since his family back home is all set for the visit. They've even rented a small bus so that the entire family and friends can all go together to take part in the Pope's visit.
And Net will bring you that Mass from Bicentennial Park live on Sunday. Our coverage begins at 12 p.m. New York time. Be sure to join us as we will have exclusive commentary. Also be sure to join us tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. We will have live coverage of Pope Benedict greeting children in Peace Square in Guanajuato. And for more from Mexico, visit our website, currentsny.net. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.